Welcome to Building Reddit. I'm your host, Ryan H. Lewis. From whichever perspective you look at it, Reddit is always evolving and growing. Users post and comment about current events or whatever they're into lately, and Reddit employees improve infrastructure, fix bugs, and deploy new features, among other things. Any one player in this ecosystem probably doesn't have the whole picture, but I wanted to at least get a better understanding of the tech side of this equation. So in today's episode, I hosted a very special roundtable discussion with three of the people best positioned to share where Reddit has been and where it's going. I'm joined by Reddit's Chief Technology Officer and founding engineer, Chris Slowe, VP of Data Science and Safety, Tyler Otto, and VP of Infrastructure, Matt Snelham. In our discussion, they'll share what they're most proud of at Reddit, how they are keeping users safe against new threats, and what they want to accomplish in 2024. Here's our discussion. So yeah, let's start by going around, and if everyone could introduce yourself and talk about what you do at Reddit.
Hey everyone, I'm Tyler Otto. I'm our VP of Data Science and Safety at Reddit. Dr. Tyler Otto. Dr. Tyler Otto. Yeah, I save that for parties though.
I think because you have your Harvard doctorate on the wall behind you right now, it loses some impact.
You know, the trick with curating your look is to actually be able to move stuff around and not have your partner come in and move it back. So mostly they're troll me or anything else.
Absolutely.
I guess I'll go next. Hey, I'm Dr. Chris Slowe. I'm a CTO and founding engineer, which means I got in really early into the startup phase of Reddit.
And I'm Matt Snelham. I'm VP of Infrastructure here at Reddit. Keep all the computers humming somewhere.
He just gently whispers to them. It keeps them calm.
It's important. They get excitable.
Wait, Matt, that's your basement, isn't it? I thought that's where we kept them all. It's like a...
That most explained my PG&E bill. Yes.
Well, too many secrets about Reddit's infrastructure there. So let's start, and I'd love to hear, y'all have been at Reddit for varying amounts of time, but I'm curious about, since you've been at Reddit, what's kind of the one thing that you've worked on that you think you're like the most proud of?
I think it's a lot of things for me, but the thing I'm most proud of is the long-term improvement in the stability of the site. When I started here about 3.5 years ago, Reddit had approximately 1.9 of uptime. Okay, close to 2, maybe like 98%, honestly. And in Q4, we were 3.5 nines, so 99.95% uptime, and a lot lower latency too. Like the site's faster than it has been. And so that's the type of thing that's not one change, it's 1,000 changes over time. Really proud of how that's accumulated here.
Yeah, and I'd add in too that there was no guarantee in those early years that 9 was at the front either. There was definitely a 9 there somewhere. And I think for me, I think the question is asking me specifically things that we've built, like, technology wise, but I'm going to ignore the intent of the question and answer how I want to anyway, as one does as VP. The thing I'm honestly most proud of is the team that we've built. Back when I built out our threat detection team, it was a little more than just a handful of us. And we've been able to scale that up from, just a few people doing very manual things into very scalable processes. We have very high retention on the team. And so it's a team that's very mission driven. It's kind of one of the oldest teams in Reddit's modern version. So that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of building as a leader. Tyler
sneaking in the great answer there. Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, it's like that's some leadership right there. That's like a VP talking. Okay, so I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna give 2 answers because I've actually had 2 different stints at Reddit. And so I'll say the thing that I am historically most proud of, going back to the early days, is that actually the thing I'm most proud of is what I mostly slam the most now, which is that our ancient monolith. So we did a rebuild of Reddit back in the deep past of 2008. And that code base has lasted for nigh on 16 years now as one of the core pieces of the technology. I like to point out when it comes up in all hands that stack no longer sparks joy, and it is the purpose of the entire org to go clean it up and to basically remove my get blame from everything. But it's somewhat delightful and terrifying that some artifact that I wrote in my early 30s 30s with Steve, actually still is up serving traffic, serving up huge amounts of lots of bandwidth's been served out of that thing.
I think we're down to about 60% of what it used to be, which feels like a good milestone for me, but also a good staying power for the code you wrote there.
Like the plants along a freeway, they're just impossible to kill. They can do their best.
Yeah.
People will crash into them. They'll cut them way down.
Car crashed into it, burns for a little bit, and then it grows the next season. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some mint in my yard that's in the same category. You just got I planted one mint plant a couple of years ago, and now it's just like whole yard.
Yeah, Python. What can you do? It's great.
Python. I think on the more recent side, I'll crib off of a chunk of Tyler's answer, which is like the team. The team's been like we built a lot of cool things. The org is actually in a really good spot, and it's just great to see the velocity accelerating with time. There's the old mythical man month. It's like adding more people is going to always decrease your productivity, and the game of building an org is to try to minimize the amount of decreases, maybe. But like we're feeling pretty much like we're cruising right now, which is great. Long path to get here, because just to test the swear word filter, oh man, it was a shit show in some of the previous years. So it's really great to have like a nice mature org.
Okay, so the one thing that hasn't changed is that we still have a monolith back from 2008, and I've looked at that code quite a bit in the past since I've been at Reddit for 2 years.
Ryan, I can only apologize so much.
Well, I don't particularly care for Python, so there's layers of unhappiness while I do it, but it's not that bad.
Hey, metaprogramming was really hot back then. I gotta tell you.
Yeah, in that era, I was committing my sins in PHP. I feel like there's no moral high ground here.
With he who has not written Perl, cast the first stone.
I'm going to stand back from that one too.
Yeah, let's. Sounds like a war is brewing. Let's talk about how Reddit tech has changed since. I guess you can pick a arbitrary point, Chris. I mean, like it maybe changed from almost nothing to what it is today. But tell me about some things about how things in Reddit have changed, whether it's like infrastructure that is more nines or safety stuff. What's interesting about ways things have changed?
Oh man, where do you even start? I would say, like a couple thoughts, and then just leave for discussion. Like I'd say to start with, for a very long time, we were in the state where the size of Reddit, the product, was always larger than the size of the team larger than the size of the team was able to handle. And what I mean by that is like, for all the joking about historical nines, like to some extent, there was a period of time where the only purpose of the company and the employees was just to keep Reddit running. It was such a skeleton crew. And so spending a whole bunch of time climbing out of that historical sort of backlog, it's almost like a combination of technical and organizational debt, is what's made this a lot of kind of, well, I'm going to use the word fun with every possible overkiller on it. So that included things like, starting to break up a monolith into services was something that didn't really even happen until 17 or 18. We didn't have a first party app until 2016, which is pretty late in the game to decide to do that. We had some various versions that we had Alien Blue before that we'd actually acquired, but like it was still nothing built ourselves. And then just really the process of like applying a modern toolkit to infrastructure, like, oh man, observability. You can catch the issues before they take the site down. Well, isn't that a lovely idea? And then I think to give some other fodder, like we've also had like a pretty long history of having a pretty good footing when it comes to user safety and just like safety plus security. It's like you learn a lot really quickly when you have the entire internet banging on you. When you kind of put up a website and then it's like, oh, what is it? What's a cross-site script? Oh, that's really cool. Shit, I was swear about that. So I think we'd actually have a bunch of one thing we've done well over the years has been like we have good reflexes there, but also that's a place where maturity matters as well, is to be able to like take those and start to make them more efficient and have people who are actually able to like catch stuff before it becomes a problem. Yeah, and I think kind of grabbing on that last bit, because I think it's sort of emblematic of how things have evolved at Reddit in general, is early days on safety, really all of our tech was about how do we clean up this mess as quickly as possible, in largely the most manual way feasible. And then you move towards more of a state of like, okay, great, safety can detect and mitigate problems as quickly as possible, but actually ensuring that the product is safe in the first place it probably has a bigger impact. And so I think that's sort of emblematic of what's happening across the platform is, hey, we got really good at fixing things. Maybe we should actually put as much energy into making sure that things don't break in the first place. I think has been something that Matt in particular, I think has really done a great job driving at the company. At some point you forget that it's like all that duct tape is not a feature, it's actually a bug.
It was structural duct tape, to be fair, and great care had gone into its application. Because to your point,
the spaghetti together.
Yeah, Reddit has been this surface for a long time with an energetic community and one excitable as well. And that's a value for all of us. But it means that it had been tested. So, like the Python monolith may not have been pretty or efficient, but it was battle hardened. And that's really the key trick for us is as we evolve the stack, whenever you change something, like the new thing you create, no matter how smart or well-intentioned or thoughtfully you design it, it doesn't have years of history behind it. And so we've been trying to move into modern Go services and gRPC layers and like much smarter ingress systems for load balancing and auto scaling and circuit breaking for ourselves. And all those have worked wonders as we've scaled, but they really can't be bug for bug compatible with the past. So we had to relearn some of the lessons that were hard fought in the years past. But it's been nice, as Tyler mentions, to go from kind of skilled reactive into a proactive mode where we're just going to prevent the problem before it ever shows up. And I think more and more that's the case with our stack. It just says no automatically to a problem surface before it becomes a real thing.
I have a slightly spicy question. So if Reddit was growing so fast with such low reliability in the past, why does reliability matter?
Well, I think we've grown faster since we've been reliable. That helps. I also think reliability is, a side effect of some of our other work so that we can focus on the product itself, on features, rather than just focusing on holding the duct tape vertical, keeping the site up. It's let's make the product experience better. Let's step ahead with what our users and moderators need. And so we're freeing up time to spend on those real issues rather than just the operational load of the business. Reddit has a ton of traffic, right? It's a big ass site for a relatively small company. And that means we really need to be efficient with where we put our time and effort, even still. I also think that one of our, the big things we've noticed as we've gone through is normally you have to choose good, fast, cheap. Pick two if you're lucky, one if you're not. We've actually managed to get all three as we work on good. The site gets faster because we're stopping doing things in inefficient ways. We're moving to much more modern systems, faster languages, better code paths, better databases, better cache systems. So latency is going down as our costs go down, as the user experience gets better. At some point, we're not going to be able to get all three anymore, but it's been like a Goldilocks period where we can win on all the fronts simultaneously.
Yeah, and I think just more broadly, the entire internet ecosystem expects things to work better and to be faster, right? Whereas Reddit's kind of early days, it was this, it was Reddit, and people had sort of lower expectations of us. SEO wasn't as big of a deal for us, but as we mature, we open up our audience to people that are not tolerant of a site that's like glitchy or is slow to load. Google has an opinion on performance for the websites that it's going to, serve up in search and things like that. So to Matt's point, yeah, we were large, but we're larger now, and we're accelerating that growth as a result of largely a lot of the performance improvements that we've been making. I'll just keep bringing it back to safety as well. I think this is another change as well. So it's not just like expectations for how quickly a site loads has changed, and like just general like look and feel of a site. Expectations for platforms kind of maintaining an experience that's free from spam, free from hate, harassment, threats of violence. Those expectations have increased alongside us, just like for the whole internet, but also for Reddit as we've matured along the way. So what was acceptable 10 years ago, I think, is no longer acceptable rightly today.
And I think I also add that users, we want to provide users with a good experience, and that goes all the way from like, we want to make sure that to Tyler's point, that there's no spam, that it's like generally pretty safe. Like we're fine on the edgy side. We don't want people to feel like they're being surrounded by jerks, which has kind of become the feeling of most of the social web at this point, or like the social media in general. It's like social media seems to skew towards like you should just really feel bad about yourself and everything. And I think we've always taken the contrarian tact of like, you should kind of come through and like have some fun, get a joke, learn an insight, and then kind of like bounce feeling better about things. I would say like, table stakes of all that is like, the site's going to be like up. Like you have to actually be able to come in and like be able to have the experience in the first place. And it is really nice to be in the spot where to Matt's point, like we're in this like virtuous cycle where as we improve our systems, they get more resilient, they actually get faster, and that actually makes the user experience better.
Tell me about how Reddit engineering is different from other tech companies. There's obviously a lot of big tech companies out there. Y'all have worked at some of them. How is Reddit different? And maybe like, how do you want it to be different? Or how do you try to make it different?
Well, from my standpoint, I'd like Reddit to not be that different, because I don't think in the infrastructure space, the problem is all of that unique. Its value is in the product. We appreciate our user base. We really want Reddit as a community platform to succeed, and in scale, it's big. So nothing works out of the box for us, right? You can't just pick up a piece of vendor software or open source or whatever and just shove it in and expect it to work. We're going to need to do tuning on every single thing we adopt. And usually, if it's really core to our world, we're increasingly becoming part of that open source community. We're making sure we're contributing changes back, because we can't write our own. We're in this uncanny valley in the middle of space where a startup can pick up a cool component and just run with it. And if you're a hyperscaler, you'll hire a team of 100 people to go build you the thing you've always wanted in 5 years, and it'll be great. We need to pick and choose very carefully on how much we can lean into a new technology set or an engineering problem and bring something novel to it to solve Reddit space without taking on the full burden of maintenance ourselves. So I think it's an interesting balance for the team, because we are solving bleeding edge problems, but we have to be really deliberate about what we're bringing into that space with us. I think we're now contributing to or committers for about a dozen open source projects inside infrastructure, from observability to routing to parts of the Kubernetes ecosystem. And I'm really, really proud of the team and how they're doing that, because it's extending that community ethos into what we do every day.
And too, from that one, like the historical view, some of the choices we're now making and that are landing really well, we had to basically say no to in the past. And that's for no other reason than it's like there's a maturity model built into there, right? So you aren't necessarily going to be able to hold right the tool that kind of comes off the shelf if you don't have a bunch of prerequisites, or if you kind of try to jump too far ahead. Not to say you always have to go through all the full evolutionary chain there, but you have to kind of time those migrations right. It's like, if the team's not big enough to do a giant migration, like, I'm just not going to do it. The other one that the lesson I've learned time and time again over the years is oh man, bleeding edge software is so attractive. And like, yes, but you also don't want to you don't want to have it load bearing. And we made that mistake early with one of our choices of data storage systems, where we got in a very early point release, like pre-version 1. And it was new and it was shiny, and it was one of the causes of one of the longest downtimes we ever had because we didn't know how to hold it. And it was worse than that. There was no standard way to hold it. It was brand new. And I will let it remain nameless because it's also been mostly deprecated. I don't want to sully its name. But to actually go back to the question, I think one thing that has always been important to me on maybe differentiating us is like, honestly, when we try to look for engineers to hire, I like to index for not just overall skill, but generally humility, or something like humility, which is like knowing that you don't know everything and you have a lot to learn. I think is one of the skills that goes the furthest to be like a good part of a team and a good developer. Like, I know all the shit that I don't know, and I like to use that as an excuse to learn more. And I think anyone who's like sure, there are people who are legitimately badasses and know everything in their field. They're like on the cutting edge. Some of the best people though, who are on the cutting edge also know how little they know, and that's what pushes them to actually keep trying to push that edge. So I think the hard part with that too is though it's like it means that I think culturally it means we have to try to balance out. It means we actually collectively we're like a bunch of really pretty nice people overall. And the game there is to try to make sure that we are nice but candid. Kind, I like to say. Like, you're actually willing to tell people if there's a problem without just letting it drop.
I'm proof that hiring isn't always successful on that front, but we definitely do our best.
Exceedingly candid, though.
Living the
obnoxiously so.
Yeah, the kind but not nice ethos.
Infuriatingly correct, I think is the word I like to use.
Yeah. How is it different? I think that there's a really interesting combination of things. Like, I have this sort of quip when I'm talking to people, like, come to Reddit. We're an 8-year-old company with 18 years of tech debt. So I think that it inherently attracts people that are interested in hard problems. The problems that other companies are also hard, but this is a pretty rare, or maybe perhaps even unique situation, and where you have a platform of this size and at a company that's still, like, in a lot of ways, I mean, I put its age more at the time when Steve and Chris came back, and like that kind of being its modern version of itself. We were a company that already had millions of users at that point, and so it's an interesting opportunity to deal with really, really hard problems at a scale that I think most companies this size don't get to deal with. The other part is really a unique, and that applies to engineering, data science. I think that applies to this kind of the entire space. I think the other part is I'm trying to say something about mission, and my words are not connecting from here to here. But there's a strong sense of mission within the company. People are here because they believe in Reddit and the mission that we're here to accomplish, right? To bring community to the company. So I think that the combination of those two things leads to that kindness that Chris has been talking about, because there's very few people that are there's very few people that are here for themselves. I think there's this general sense that I'm here because there's a great opportunity. The problems are hard, they're interesting, and I get to work with great people that share my values.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think you also touched on a point that is always part of my conversation about why I'm here and why a lot of my staff are here. There is a sweet spot where normally if you have this scale, this many users, and this maturity of company, you're not allowed to touch much. You don't get to change it very rapidly because there's risk, or you'll screw up next quarter's revenue, or are you sure you even need to bother with that? And I think there's just an ethos of, we can make this better. We want to make Reddit as good as it can be. And so it's not if we need to change or why we need to change, it's just how we get there. And so if you're just asking how we get to a better place, people are going to engage in a lot more active discussion together. They're going to join and be interested in working together on that problem rather than trying to defend their turf. And so I think it is a pretty collaborative space there, because we all come in with this mindset of, we can make Reddit better. Let's go do that. And having the resources and the user traffic simultaneously with that opportunity is pretty awesome, because I've worked at bigger, but never with so many keys to change things.
I guess about a year ago, I asked Dr. Slowe about his holy grail. And I'm interested in an update on that, but I'm also interested, Matt and Tyler, if y'all have holy grails, things that you want to do or acquire or learn, or something like that. What is your own personal holy grail? And Chris, did you ever get a 1932 Denver Mint quarter?
No, I have not at this point. I actually haven't had much time to do that last year.
So are you still looking for it, or is there a new holy grail that's kind of taken its place?
I think in the last bit of time, I got a little bit deeper back into like maker stuff in the last year. So I'm actually doing a pretty complicated build out right now. I'm trying to automate my telescope. And I've been threatening to do this for literally years. And I actually started buying parts for it. I did some printer upgrades, and I'm actually printing some parts. So we'll see if that actually, I figure at this rate, it'll be done sometime in the early 30s. And then, like 2 to 20 minutes a day, we'll get there.
It's so weird to talk about the early 30s.
Yeah, I know. It's not that far away. Yeah, it's not that far away.
I remember the aughts. I mean, what are we now?
Hey, the 90s is only 10 years ago. I'm not sure why everyone keeps acting otherwise.
Tough.
But yeah, I think maybe my holy grail right now is to actually complete a home project. That's probably one of the things that I will aspire to finish something.
I guess I will go next. Holy grail. Gosh, I don't really know what this question means, so I'll just the thing that is most important to me right now. So I had a newborn, so I've got a 2-month-old at home. So my new most important thing in life is just learning to be a dad, and at least a tolerable one. Realizing that I'll screw up along the way, but just learning to be a dad and enjoying my expanded family.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, I'm really pretty easy to please, and I took time off after my last job and was like, do I want to vacation? Do I want to travel the world? Do I want to, sit and read? Do I want to be a maker and automate telescopes? And I determined that I'm actually a weirdo who really likes the intellectual engagement of, these problems. So I came back to work willfully. Reddit's been a hell of a lot of fun. And so helping Reddit grow is currently my holy grail, my quest, my windmill that I'm tilting at. That may be silly, but it's true. And we'll see what happens after that. But it's currently a really fun journey. After that, probably a boat.
Did you make yourself from scratch?
Oh yeah, and it's automated.
Oh no, God no! I'm buying something in carbon fiber from someone. That'd be great. Yeah, a factory can make that.
Cool. Okay. So let's talk about growth. I think that one of the things that seems interesting is that as Reddit grows in terms of users and traffic, there's a lot of things that are involved that people don't necessarily think of right off the bat. So obviously there's having reliability for pages and maybe allowing people to add comments and things like that. But I think there's a lot more involved, and I'd love to hear y'all's takes about kind of challenges we've gone through, or maybe still have, or things that we've overcome, things that have popped up as we've been growing.
Well, I think one thing that differentiates us that has helped, or maybe it's a model we've applied everywhere, is that we try to make our systems scale in a way, and by this I mean technology systems are our kind of user flows to scale in a way where you can sort of self-police would be the underlying model, right? So as an example, we early on decided to pick the path of instead of creating, we created subreddits, which are now called communities, which are run by moderation teams who really have kind of a free hand to run their communities however they want, down to the point of being able to set rules and to set sort of almost cultural tone to it. And one lesson we've learned over the years is that whenever we create a new product, that there has to be a way for that new product to have some form of moderation, even if it's not called that, right? It's there has to be some way where users can, to a large extent, make sure that they have control over their own experience. And that just means that
it's not to say that we don't have a role in it. In fact, we do have a role in it. We're always going to be present, but it's part of like a layered moderation model where we're kind of like the last line of defense, or we're the ones who either are like, it's like the model builds into it the idea that you don't just have users, you're going to have abusers, right? You're going to have somebody who's actually come along and like figure out how to mess with it. And if you don't include that up front to the product spec, you're in for a bad time later. And that lesson's really, I think, pretty well established. I'll start with that.
Yeah, and I think that jumping on that, I think that what that enables, what we know is like, look, abuse looks different to different communities, right? That what is appropriate in one space can be wildly inappropriate in another. Exact same phrasing, image, whatever the thing is, but directed into a certain audience means a very different thing. Those are things that as a centralized platform, we're always going to struggle with that level of nuance and understanding those sort of cultural norms. So I think that our path of enabling communities to be able to set their own standards and set their own culture, I think has been very helpful. I think that the role we play, as Chris said, we have our policy line, so it's important we say, hey, look, these are the things that are not allowed anywhere. But the other part of that is also making sure that those communities have easy access to tools to be able to say, hey, this seems like it's, not meeting the standards that you're setting within the community. And so that's one of the big shifts for the data or for the safety team in the last couple of years, is not just building better stuff for us to be more effective and efficient in getting stuff off of the platform, but making sure that it's extensible so that mods can then create their own set of rules without having to, do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, I think that goes nicely into the question of API, which was a hot topic last year for a lot of folks. Some still is. We love our API users, right? It's that part of democratizing these tools into the community and having the ability to set standards and maintain safety or norms in different ways. And I think a lot of the API tools have enabled that over the years. So we want them to continue being there. We want them to exist, and my team supports that API endpoint. But one of the other truths of it is that a lot of the spam and abuse coming into the platform comes in via automated channels that use those kind of surfaces too. So we have to simultaneously enable the individual moderators and community owners and members to have those, like the API entrance to the site, to manage things and keep out the bad actors who, when they email or load up their website to ask for an API key or something, look really similar. So how do we do bad actor detection, reputation management, and just active like DOS blocking and so on those surfaces, while still really enabling those people who use it constructively for the communities to function safely, well, reliably, and in fact, like maybe even raise API rate limits and give them more traffic into the site more sustainably for us. So that's been a lot of work over the past year to try and proactively block out those bad users while still keeping, the community value generators, the people who really are here to help, able to use those surfaces well. And I think that's going to be a continuing discussion, but contrary to some of the comments I read on our site, we really do want the API to exist. In fact, we're expanding it with our developer platform to offer another more modernized surface, because our old API wasn't designed so much as GRU. We kind of exposed the old monolith as an REST form. And even today, we've kept that bug for bug compatible, but about a third of it is no longer implemented by the old Python monolith. It's new modern services that just pretend they're the old system to keep that stability and consistency for the existing tools. And we're going to, maintain that going forward as well.
Are there any synergies between tools or techniques that we may be using for like detecting bad actors and kind of like not necessarily just the API surface, but maybe, at any sort of kind of like accessible Reddit surface and like safety moderation tools? Are there kind of like any commonalities between those that we're able to, I guess, take advantage of?
Yeah, Tyler and I are working on a bunch of things jointly right now, trying to give more signals to his teams that they can do smarter dynamic activities and that we can provide avenues for them to signal when the machine should just shut it off automatically based on rules that are dynamic, configurable, and really have a range of nuance available to them that a lot of these systems otherwise miss.
Yeah. So while we've been building up capabilities on, say, the spam detection side of things, those problems are fundamentally different than, say, trying to understand malicious traffic on the platform, right? It's about, can you identify a basic set of patterns and say this chunk of traffic or users or whatever looks distinct from the sort of normal, background behavior that we expect. And so being able to find those places where we can extend technology to solve new problems, and maybe they sort of piggyback on each other. So, it could be the case that, the bad actors that are attempting to DDoS us, they have some connection to groups that have been, might spam us very aggressively. So there's these places where techniques can be applied in multiple different areas. And so that's, like Matt said, something that we're working on very actively right now, is figure out where do we have some mature tech that we can maybe try to apply to more burning current problems that we face.
And even some bleeding edge tech, although hopefully it's not load bearing just yet. Like I know you're doing fun things with like LLMs and generative systems to try and add signals to there.
Yeah, that's right. So then, on the safety side of things, historically, and I'm saying historically like this isn't still true, but historically we've had a strong reliance on, say, behavioral signals for our anti-abuse efforts. I still believe this is the right way to approach things. It internationalizes very well. It is agnostic of understanding languages and cultural norms and things like that. But there's a set of behaviors that we can understand as sort of normal, and then it kind of helps identify what's abnormal of like abusive behavior. Obviously, LLMs have provided a great new tool in our tool chest, and so we have been developing our own LLMs for safety purposes, because leveraging Reddit data is important, right? Because there's a different way that people speak, and in turn also the way that they abuse each other on Reddit. So what's different here than it might on another platform? So it's been important for us to build that tech ourselves. And then where can we apply it to, say, any automation that we're applying? Where can we turn those into native filters for our moderator teams? Where can we then take that, even move it outside of safety? Where can we apply this to ensure that product surfaces are highlighting the right kind of content? So there might be stuff that's allowed on our platform but might be offensive in, say, search output or something along those lines. So ensuring that not only do we have clean communities that we're not allowing policy violating content, but that also like our different surfaces have the appropriate level of the appropriate checks in place before we say, hey, we want to amplify a particular piece of content.
I think this probably goes outside of just kind of like safety and infra, but what does the collaboration model look like between different teams and different groups? Like, is it always top down? Like Chris tells Tyler and Matt what he wants to happen, and then y'all go and talk to your people, and then it filters down. Or, there's probably a lot of people getting these signals and seeing them and working with them, seeing some weird data. What happens? How does it all work together?
Oh, we don't take direction very well.
Yeah, mostly it's like walk down from the mountain with some stone tablets. Usually, is the starting point. That's usually the best way to give information. But
I feel like you spend a lot of time. Yeah, you spend a lot of time carving, and it feels like a little bit of a waste of time comparatively. Like you just use a dock.
Hey, it's artisanal stone tablets are hard to find these days, Matt.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, these two don't take direction very well. I don't really know what I do here anymore. I like to joke that I'm the room that we rugitize the room together on these situations. No, I think that the collaboration for it depends a lot on what the actual project is. In question. I think for like what we were just talking about, the name of the game is kind of something like operational efficiency, and there's an acronym, usually OODA loops: observe, orient, decide and act, I think is the acronym.
Yep.
And what you want to do is, if you want to be able to make decisions quickly in the case of something like in this case, we're talking about threats under some broad category of threat. And the name of the game is just to make sure that your ability to detect and iterate is as fast as possible. And that just can't be a top-down thing, right? Like you do that top-down and you're like, oh, but Ryan, who's going to choose the steering committee for that discussion, right? Because you just see like all the structure again, or anything. You want to enable teams to make the call live and fast, and actually like just knock it out. I think also that for this kind of problem too, it's like it's the extreme case of also the better is the enemy of the good, right? You're trying to solve a problem that's acute right now, get the first 80% done, and worry about the next 20% later when it's the main problem. I think when it comes though to like, where the top down stuff come in is like, that's like resource allocation and like broader strategy over a longer period of time of like, do we want to invest in this entire area? Honestly, like talking about this work, this is new from the last year, roughly. It was a decision that we made more top down of like, yeah, actually it's probably time for us to pay more attention to the API. And to a large extent, that decision came from side effects of all that random grabbing and crawling, besides the nefarious outcomes of like spam and abuse, is it means that there's like giant dumps of our user data that they have no control over, right? It's like, forget about the right to be forgotten if you just like decided to grab Reddit data and post it somewhere at torrent. And then you add in things like, yeah, people are training LLMs off of us, the same kind of like potential liability for our users. And so we just have to be a little bit more careful about how that's being used. I think that's where the top down comes from.
Yeah.
And of course, in terms of stone tablets.
But once you're in there, like, look, Tyler's proud of his team. I'm proud of mine. My goal is to hire people who are smarter than me. So once we know, like, let's go make this safer, our teams come up with better ideas than we will centrally. And so the goal is to really distribute it down into them and make sure that they have the tools necessary to actually put those ideas into practice, test them out, try them with users quickly. And that for those really critical loops, that the OODA concept is to get inside your adversary's loop, i.e. be faster than they can respond. And we have a responsibility to try and do that for our users, like to actually pull that back and enable mods to respond quickly and like take the really terrible stuff out before mods even have to see it, right? Like automate that stuff out. I think, we're doing a pretty good job building those teams, those systems, and those tools.
Yeah, and I think this is an area where we've hugely improved in the last handful of years. If I were to look back where we were 6-7 years ago, it was cross-functional teamwork was hard. Still good reasons for that, right? I mean, I think that teamwork is not as trivial. Like creating a team dynamic is not as trivial as it sounds. And so, doing it in a larger scale and trying to grow really quickly and whatever, like it's hard. And so you have to be very intentional about it. And I think this is something that there's always room for improvement. I think we still have a ways to go. But I think that there's been huge progress over the last couple of years. And I don't think that it's one of those like, you have to pick a place where you're going to force it. And I think that that's been happening more and more kind of at the VP layer. I think that we all as a team have been working on coming together more. And then I can kind of see how that's pushing down to the teams. Like we're now just like, I kind of naturally hear directors on Matt's team brought up in one-on-ones with my directors or whatever. Like there's, we can kind of set the tone, but it won't get very far if we're the ones trying to push everything, right? Like there's just, I have limited scope. I have, limited attention. But if I can kind of provide guardrails, hey, here are the general things that are important, and give the team as much autonomy to be able to operate within that and say, hey, make sure that they understand who our partners are. If you create the right environment for that, I think you'll generally be impressed. I think that's something that is really starting to accelerate within the company. I see generally way better teamwork, way more cross-functional projects than I did even just 2 years ago.
Yeah. And just before sitting down with you guys here today, I was in a postmortem for my team. We had an incident. Turns out it wasn't that major, but it was potentially risky. And it was cross-functional and root. And I expected to show up and like have to say a bunch of things. I kept quiet. It was mute the entire time. My team was on top of it. They identified everything they needed to do. They were passing it out between teams and saying, oh yeah, we should take this. You should take this. including reorging how they were structuring a service stack. And like, we'll just give ownership of that to you. And they're like, yeah, we'll take it, which is really lovely to see, right? Like that means that the organization is functioning well. And the less I need to say, the better.
Yeah, there's nothing more delightful becoming a senior leader and being able to like not have to speak during a meeting. It's like that. It's just letting them like kind of being able to watch the machine is really enjoyable. I think also like for the back to the UDA framework, like getting the decision to be at the right level just takes time and practice and just like refining, because like there's always going to be a tendency to try to optimize for like either you make them all at the top, you make them all at the bottom. And the answer is actually kind of the right mix of the two based on the scale, right? That's why you have an org that's hierarchy, so you can actually break the problems into pieces and give them to teams that can actually help them completely. And then of course, like I don't want to undermine the or understate the observability part's pretty huge in there too. It's like it's kind of hard to make a decision when you have no idea what's going on, and that's been a place where I think we put also a lot of effort in the last 5 years for sure, definitely the last 2 as well. Yeah,
I'm pretty proud of that. We actually built an entire observability stack and moved it internally from some external vendors that aren't particularly important. And we're running it on a Prometheus and Grafana stack that is super high scale, super fast, and we're incorporating more and more data into it, tying into multiple backends. We have a ton of observability about how our site is functioning, about what the user experience is, increasingly like the stability and performance of the user clients, just to see like, is this working as well as we want it to for people? It's depersonalized. I don't care who you are or what you're doing with it. It's just that, is it up? Is it running? Is it interacting the way we want it to? And I'm really proud of what we constructed there, because I think that's world-class here at Reddit.
Okay, cool. A lighter question. I'm curious, and Tyler, you can't answer learning to be a dad. Pick something else. Tell me about one thing that you are currently learning. It could be tech related. It could not be tech related. But curious about this, since we don't know everything, of course. What are you learning?
I'll give it a tech and a non-tech answer. On the tech side, I'm generally trying to better understand LLMs, both as a user and how do I build my own. I think this is an area like, I'm a physicist by nature, so I'm skeptical of things that are this complicated. I don't understand my classical mechanics. I can't possibly try to understand the quantum mechanics. So trying to understand the kind of tech behind LLMs better. On the non-tech side of things, and it's sort of related to this. I'm trying to learn more about the history and the technology and like the evolutions that happened during the space race. I think that there's a lot of. It feels like there's some parallels to the current LLM environment. And so it's just a fascinating time period that I've read a lot about the political changes and the societal changes during this time period, but I understand a lot less about the technologies that had to be developed and things like that. So that's fascinating to me. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna lightly plug a book, which I just finished a book called A City on Mars, which is it's basically supposed to, it originally was written with the intention of explaining how one would actually build a city on Mars, and the authors, as they were writing it, discovered over the course of the writing that it's actually really difficult. And so it went from being this optimistic book to one that is actually completely, I wouldn't quite say pessimistic, but definitely realistic about how difficult it would be to settle in space. And because I actually have the same kind of also physicist, also just love space, and therefore have always wanted to look at that side. Man, it's difficult. I mean, that's one of the things they point out in there is you're worried about potentially living on an Earth that's going through climate change, where it's surface temperature gets a little bit too hot, right? At least you can breathe the air, So you're gonna start from the basics there. I'd say it's just like a cop out, because my answer is the same. I'm actually also trying to learn how about machine learning. Modern machine learning techniques is something that came along after I went to the dark side, became a manager for most of my career, and so I'm always feeling like I'm trying to catch up on that front. Try to keep my my teeth sharp here and there, at least play around every once in a while with PyTorch and just see what I can actually do. The answer is currently still very little, though the kitchen sinks are really powerful these days.
And then I think on the other side, I go down and do hardware when I'm actually wanting to learn something. So I'm more on I've got a bunch of Arduinos and Pis running around my house at all times, which means that my home automation system is somewhat bespoke.
Nice. I think for tech, I can be the one person who doesn't answer ML in any form. That goes to my last job doing DNNs and transformers and all sorts of stuff. And I'm just sick of it. Yeah, none of that. We should go back to manual, bespoke, handcrafted systems. I'm actually tuning up my networking code and trying to rewrite some of the base layers for HTTP3 connection handling in Go right now, which is a whole challenge. I'm going to suck. You're never going to see my code on GitHub or anything, but it's a good brush up. Outside of tech, I'm doing the opposite of life on Mars, and I'm an urbanist at core, living in the middle of the city here, reading up on all of the zoning and construction transformations and why cities kind of fail to meet the needs of people within them pretty reliably over the past century. And so going from the biography of Robert Moses, who drove the freeway construction era and urban renewal and all the sins associated with it in New York, to the history of DBI corruption here in San Francisco and every place in between. So there's a lot of great material out there, and I find it fascinating about why these pressures land the way they do and why there's not too many magic bullets. But there's a lot of easy solutions that if you just take them, you'll probably get the right answer in 20 years. Not fast enough for most people.
Okay. You've all kind of mentioned some things already, but I'm curious about why, there's anything you haven't mentioned about why you like working at Reddit. Maybe there's something personal that it kind of meets for you, aside from maybe it's a public good or something like that. Why do you like continuing to come to your job?
I like the product. I've been a user for a long time, and I would pick up Reddit if I didn't work here. It's more fun picking it up when I do and knowing why that's happening and that we can have some influence on improving it. And I think you mentioned to an earlier question, the ability to actually affect change for a business that's already as scaled and impacts as many people as Reddit is pretty fun. It's pretty worthwhile. It makes coming into work positive every day. Work's not always fun, but the outcome is there and the impact is pretty obvious on the business. And that means a lot. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, my pitch for 8-year-old company, 18 years of tech debt, that's my pitch to myself kind of every day. The why I joined, first of all, was to work with Chris and Steve. Again, I had worked with them at a previous company, so that's why I came here. I wasn't admittedly a big Reddit user before that. I think I probably signed up shortly around the time that Chris and Steve went back. Any of my internet time before that was academic papers and very, very practical, boring reasons for using the internet. And now I've been fully indoctrinated into Reddit. So now I'm here, the people, I continue to just really enjoy the people that I get to work with and the problems. While we can solve a bunch of problems every year, the problems don't seem to get easier. If anything, they get harder. So that's what I'm here for. I like an 8-year-old company with 18 years tech debt.
Yeah, I'd say, I think that the way the internet has developed over the last 30 years, there's definitely been points where it's almost felt well, that was a fun experiment. Let's all call it quits. Let's go back to the other methods. But I think that the exception to that has consistently been Reddit. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. It's it's the one place that I can think of on the modern internet where it's everyone accepts that comment sections are toxic and humans are, mean, and there's all just a bunch of rage bait floating around everywhere else. And it's the one place you can go and actually people are generally funny and actually generally well mannered and talk to each other very civilly. And it's not just part of the culture, it's part of the way that the incentives are set up in the product that make that the case. Like there's no incentive to like, to create a bunch of rage bait for the most part. There's no incentive to be a jerk. And I think that that's like, it just shows that there is like still potential for humanity to some extent. And so I think also just, I have the distinguishing point to being the one who actually came back. So I was originally here for the first 5 years, and then I came back after a 5-year hiatus. When Reddit was going through some tough times, like most of that was because like at the time I thought that I had actually like emotionally separated myself from the startup I was a part of. But then at the time I realized that like if Reddit were to disappear, that would be like something magical disappearing from the internet. I didn't want that to happen. And I think actually the model's proven itself out, which is like kind of the best part. It's taken us a very long road to get there. Like, you know, this entire parts of the industry have like risen and fallen in our 18-year life. So just kind of nice to see that the you know, something we thought through but cobbled together ultimately in the mid-aughts was like kind of the right direction. Still sorry about the monolith though.
Yeah, we'll get to the apologies later. It's fine.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so as Reddit stays, not Reddit stays the same, but Reddit's still here. I think one of the pieces of the magic is that it's authentic conversations. It's real humans. We've got LLMs are a new maybe threat, you could say, because they kind of sound like humans when they generate text. There's automation. There's all these kinds of things where people could create non-human interaction. Bots could be talking. How do we keep that maybe from happening, or how do we protect against that?
It's going to be hard for me to answer this question. My local copy of Llama 2 just crashed, so I'm going to have to give me a second to restart that. No, it's like, look, I think that the one, actually, Tyler and I have talked about this before. So I'm going to pull you back in, Tyler, because like we were trying to think through like, what's the motivation for even like why would you try to apply an LLM to something like Reddit, right? And like, there's always going to be like, it's always going to be cases that we can come up with. But like the first pass, it's like, okay, so first off, you could use it as a way to garner a bunch of like artificial karma on Reddit and like get a following, and then use that to push some sort of like spam. It's tale as old as time. Like that's like that kind of solution has been in place forever. And to some extent, like we have just generations of tools to help us like hunt that down. And that's not to say we do a perfect job at it, because like there is no perfect. There's always going to be some like rounding error, right? But like vast swaths of it we're able to catch, and like we're able to help provide tools for your users to detect it and kind of pass it on. Another one, it would be like, you know, you create this account that is creating like a whole bunch of artificial content, so that later they can do some sort of great unmasking of like, haha, it was I all along, this artificial LLM that is going to pretend to be a Reddit user. If I had a nickel for every time somebody had to like said like, look, and I was able to cheat something up on Reddit, it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Got like 3 things up, and like they don't talk about the 50 other things that are sitting by there, or 500 other things sitting by the wayside. They're always like celebrate the one that kind of made it past the defenses.
Congratulations, you get
like
3 internet points.
3 internet points, which were worth a lot more in the history. It's like Bitcoin; it inflates really rapidly.
Yeah, inflation's a bitch.
It really is. And then the other case is like, well, so what happens if you create a model that actually is like a well-meaning, useful member of a community? And that's like kind of not terrible. I mean, like I think if anything, like the one difference on Reddit is like that we do actually have a large ecosystem of fairly articulate, self-identified bots that really add to the kind of like the kind of help with the richness, to be honest. Like, because they go for all the way from like annoying to useful. To the point where it's even like it's like a running joke on Reddit about like, you know, replying good bot to a bot, and like there's like a scoreboard somewhere where people keep track of how many bots, like how many times people say good bot to bots on Reddit. And so I think that as long as everything is kind of clear and in the open, that feeds into the authenticity of like, if you know you're interacting with a bot, but you know you're interacting with a bot, nobody's getting hurt, right? It's when you start like to try to pretend to be something else. That's oftentimes where we draw a lot of our lines on like what's appropriate versus what's not. And the community has, I think, a very similar kind of vibe to it of like, if they know what they're getting into, they're cool with it. If they think they're being duped, that's when the pitchforks and torches come out.
Yeah, I think this is where we have this line that manipulation is against our rules, right? And so long as there's an earnestness to the interaction, so right, you've identified yourself as a bot, perhaps. Like the number of times I've had somebody surface to me like, "Hey, this is this LLM bot," and like it's having a great conversation. It's like somebody's asking a question and then it's responding to them. And it's like it's clear. It's like got whatever. U/something or other _ bot. And like, people are like, thank you very much. That was a very helpful answer. Like, that feels helpful. Like that feels like we've had bots like that on our platform forever. I think that there was, because they were so rudimentary and could do a kind of a narrow set of tasks, it felt more okay to people. But I think that bots are going to change how we interact in a lot of different ways. I think there's no reason to assume that social media isn't a part of that. I think that the important part for us is ensuring that they're not used to manipulate, to somehow, to manipulate our users, right? As Chris said, spam, this isn't how we do spam detection. It's not like we're looking around and going like, who's writing some very spammy language? That doesn't sound right. Like, that's not how spam mitigation works. I don't think this is the spam apocalypse that people have made them out to be. And I think a lot of people are trying to build some useful things with them, and we will continue to expand our efforts to root out manipulation, and this will just be the next iteration of that. So,
I think we've also seen communities directly struggle with this. Like before the LLMs really came to the fore, there was a whole bunch of image generation that came out right before, right? Like the Midjourneys and the Stable Diffusions of the world. And there was a lot of our art communities had some issues up front with well, what does this mean for art, right? And had some, there was some direct drama, and because it's the art should be involved in human is kind of part of the thing. And it's funny because there's kind of two directions it's gone. And one is that I think there's increasingly some acceptance of the fact that it's just it's kind of part of the toolkit now. It's in the same way that you go back 25 years and, we had photographers complaining about Photoshop because it's oh man, now there's never going to be an authentic photo again. But now it's just kind of yeah, it's just it's part of the toolkit. You can make any image you want, but you can make a good image better at the same time. I think if you just hang around in any of the image generation communities, it turns out you can make a ton of really derivative, boring art that's all looks exactly the same, right? It's all the way from the waifu spectrum to the this looks derivative. But then if you look at actual artists who are able to incorporate into their flows and just do this quick iteration, it's actually really neat that you can actually you can improve creativity to some extent. That's my first time saying waifu in a broadcast, by the way. Just want to point that out.
I was appreciating how you slipped that in. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Your waifu art is derivative and boring.
So let's talk about 2024. It's beginning of the year. I know that I think it probably hasn't ended. Y'all are thinking about what's coming up. What you need to be focused on, what parts of the monolith need to be pulled away. What's next for tech at Reddit?
Well, I've got my favorite answer for this one. And our top of list for 2024 and maybe after is Reddit has been cloud-based for a hell of a long time, but it's also been singly homed. So everything lives in US East. We have been working very hard in 2023 to stand up new distributed footprints. And in 2024, the goal is to actually make Reddit multi-region, multi-homed fully. That's a big lift for an old tech stack, 18 years of tech debt. It's hard to do on a new system, but doing it in flight is even more fun. I think we're on track for it, actually. We're in milestone 4 of a 11-point plan at this point. And it's on track. So I'm really impressed with what the team has pulled together here and the challenges they managed to solve so far. But it's going to be another year of good, solid fun on that one.
I think nearby that one, I would add in like one of the nice things about starting to go to multi-home is you start getting the ability to like shorten the hop to our users because apparently not everybody lives in US East. It's a whole other world there, and like speed of light is in fact a thing when you start thinking about long distances. And so as we're building that plan out, we're kind of in parallel. Also, we've been spending some time over the last bunch of years on our international strategy. It turns out that Reddit heavily indexes English. It's not universal, but it's definitely a majority English speaking or close by. And being able to get some, we've already made some good inroads in places to like have good local communities that just don't primarily speak English. It requires some determination to really be able to bootstrap from scratch those communities. And it goes beyond just having to make sure that the experience is properly localized. It means really having to start setting up those like seed communities that have the same sort of like initial cultural seed or something that's at least close by. It makes it compatible with the product. And then of course you can start playing fun with, there's probably some fun with LLMs in there that actually might be useful. Like machine translation is kind of cool. Be nice if we could actually solve the Babel problem, but we're going to try.
This is an area where I've talked a lot about safety. I might talk a little bit more about DS. We're making some heavy investments in our underlying data foundation. So that's probably the thing that I'm most excited about this year, because I think this has been one of the biggest challenges, not just for us as a data science team, but also for the rest of the company. Initially, why I was hired here was to help to build more of a self-service analytics culture within the company back when we were very small. A lot of the choices or maybe lack of choices that we've made on the data front over the last number of years have limited our ability to do that. So it's really required. We have data scientists in all these places where, really, if we had data in a certain structure, this is a place where I think LLMs are going to be very exciting. I can go into a thing and say, hey, how many users did we have from Germany over the last 90 days? And how many of them voted or something along those lines? Okay, just like conversationally speak to an analytics system and be able to get the information that I'm looking for. Now, not only are we freeing up data scientists, but we're like enabling everybody else, right? So I think that there's always this cost associated with like, if I have a question and I've got to ask somebody else to answer it for me, then there's a barrier for me answering that question. And then there's going to be a barrier for that person. They're going to go, is this important enough? What's your reason? Did you file a ticket? Whatever. Instead of like, I'm actually just curious. So I think a lot of the investments that we're going to be making this year are going to enable a curiosity within the rest of the company, which would be great for the rest of the company. And then what that means is that now data science can focus on even more and more exciting problems. So this is one of those areas where I think that this is going to be kind of a force multiplier for the company and for DS in future years.
Yeah, we have actually even a pilot of what you're describing running already with like a conversational voice to text and text through interpretation LLM interface to our data science stack. It's early days, but it's amazing to watch how far that stuff has come in a short time and can be really powerful to answer questions quickly in the future. You're still probably going to need DS people to turn that data into information and insights into the future. But I think just like Chris was saying with, all of the ML techniques you can lend to artists, it really just shows the talented ones that much more quickly and another tool in the toolbox to enable you to move faster.
One that is nothing to do with LLMs. We are actually secretly in the middle of rebuilding pretty much all of our product underlying platforms. So like we've got a major web stack rebuild that's in progress right now, secretly and deviously behind the scenes. We're moving from React to Lit Element. The internal code name is called Shreddit, and it's gradually eating up the web, which is great because it is one of the built-in requirements is to keep it fast. And so we're recently like a rough order of magnitude faster page rendering and serving from that. We've also done some underlying rebuilds of our apps at the same time. And the nice thing about the current state of maturity is we're able to do this kind of like silently without really anybody noticing because things just get faster and better.
Yeah. And I really love where Shreddit is. Kind of telling myself I was an old .reddit user for a long time. Shreddit is the one thing that's made me move forward on the website. But then again, I also actually really like our Android client. I'm pretty happy with it most of the days.
And that's it for the roundtable. I wanted to again thank Chris, Tyler, and Matt for spending their time with me and sharing so much about Reddit. So what do you think? Does it sound cool to build Reddit, one of the largest sites on the internet? If so, check out our open positions at www.redditinc.com/careers. And to get more behind the scenes info, check out Reddit's engineering blog at reddit.com/r/redditeng. And that's it for now. See you in the next episode of Building Reddit. Building Reddit is an official podcast from Reddit. This episode was produced by Ryan H. Lewis and Mackenzie Green. Thanks for listening.